they say physician heal thyself. Physician heal thyself to me now means physician make sure that you're humble enough to find the help you need to start the healing process. I'm not saying don't be afraid. I'm saying it's okay to be afraid. I was terrified, but do it anyway. You're not alone. I think my story begins where all stories begin, in childhood. Childhood was a very special time, especially because I got to travel and live in different parts of the world. Having said that, there was also some moments of trauma, which ultimately led me to the doors of Rogers. I went to medical school in New Delhi, and then I came to USA, emigrated here because I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I firmly believe that now that I've had the training, I'm impervious to any psychiatric problems, and if they do come anywhere nearby, I'll use my ninja skills and keep them away, right? Over the next 15 years, I realized that nope, going through the training does not mean that you're impervious to it. Just like, just because you're a cancer surgeon doesn't mean you'll never get cancer. It doesn't mean that you'll be able to perform surgery on yourself. Despite best efforts, that trauma was affecting my personal life. Eventually, I was in psychoanalysis, and I did that for 7 years. However, what I learned, unfortunately the hard way, was that I didn't quite have the tools to be able to address it. And life came to a head where basically there was an ultimatum for me. Either do something different or perish the consequences. Frankly, it was out of sheer desperation that I thought about, what do I do? What else is there after 7 years of psychoanalysis, right? I'm on medication and it's supposed to be helping, but clearly it's not enough. And so, I thought about what's the next step? Rogers, no question about it. Why? Because I started noticing a pattern where the patients that were coming back from Rogers were doing significantly better. I wanted to see, where's this magical place that my patients go and they come back feeling better, And then I reached out to Rogers. I still remember that day when I opened the webpage that I'd opened a million times before and given that number to my patients for the screening. And now here I was calling that number myself. And I still remember feeling so overcome with fear and shame. I think my first thought was, what will that person think? What if I end up talking to a screener that has worked with me and they're like, oh, you? Yeah, I used to discuss cases with you. Now you are a case? And then who would be the psychiatrist? They could be a colleague. Heck, I could have trained them. This was not an easy decision, and I was aware that it would affect so many parts of my professional life. And then my personal life. What would it mean, to me, to my family here, my family back home? So I had to kind of traverse all of that rather quickly, and I ended up making that call. I'll be very honest. I had zero expectations. What I told myself was, this isn't going to work. That's where I was. I was pretty hopeless and desperate. But what I did tell myself, interestingly, at the same time was, I'm going to commit. And that's how I kind of walked in. One thing that I was really impressed with is the thoughtfulness of the questions. They asked me the important questions that really made me feel like a fellow human. The assessment and the treatment had started even before I'd started, because they're trying to think about what's important to me, what I value. A big part of my treatment became leaning into vulnerability. In fact, I have that post-it note right on my computer that says, breathe in courage, breathe out self-doubt. Who knew I'd be one of those guys that was living my life based on affirmations? The biggest gift was mindfulness, where I could actually, it was like all the work I had done cerebrally with the therapist, I was processing, where I began to say, okay, this is transforming. What happened over 6 weeks is it created an opening, a space for me to realize not just that there's a problem, but what the problem is, the roots, and helped me figure out what I could do instead. And then the job was to commit to make this a lifestyle, a way of thinking. So it's like the proverb, right? They didn't really catch fish for me, they taught me how to fish. The treatment hasn't abolished my PTSD. What it has done is it has made me more aware of my PTSD, signs of PTSD, how it's creeping up in daily life. With some training and practice, I've been able to catch it sooner, where some of those behaviors that I used to do when I was triggered, are gone. Plus, the excellent psychiatrist, who's a role model for all psychiatrists really, made some very important medication changes that have really helped with the symptoms. Rogers really is a very successful business, but then somehow they figured out how to run a business while being intensely human. It makes you believe in the world a bit more.